Elena Rodriguez wiped down the last table at Giovanni's restaurant, her tired eyes scanning the empty dining room. The clock showed 11:30 p.m., and she still had to count the register and clean the kitchen before heading home to her small apartment. Working two jobs wasn't easy, but it was the only way she could afford her college tuition and help her sick mother with medical bills. The restaurant sat in the heart of Little Italy, where whispered conversations and suspicious glances were as common as the smell of garlic and fresh pasta. Elena had learned to keep her head down and mind her own business. She was just another invisible waitress to the well-dressed men who came in for their weekly meetings in the back room. What Elena didn't know was that one of those men had been watching her for months. Dante Marconi owned half the city, though most people didn't know it. To the outside world, he was a successful businessman who owned restaurants, construction companies, and real estate. But those in the know understood that he was the head of the most powerful crime family on the East Coast. At 35, he commanded respect through fear, and his word was law in his world. Dante had first noticed Elena 6 months ago when he came to Giovanni's for a business dinner. She had served his table with quiet efficiency, never once looking directly at him or trying to catch his attention like so many other women did. Her dark hair was always pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she wore no makeup except for a touch of lip balm. She moved through the restaurant like a ghost, invisible to most, but somehow captivating to him. Night after night, Dante found excuses to visit Giovanni's. He told himself it was about business, but deep down, he knew the truth. There was something about Elena's innocence in his dark world that drew him like a moth to flame. She represented everything pure that he had lost long ago. Elena lived in a different universe from Dante's world of power and violence. Her days started at 6 a.m. with classes at the community college where she studied business administration. She dreamed of opening her own small bakery someday, somewhere far from the city where she could live peacefully. Her afternoons were spent at a daycare center where she worked with children, and her evenings belonged to Giovanni's restaurant. Money was always tight. Elena's mother, Maria, had been diagnosed with diabetes 2 years earlier, and the medical bills kept piling up. Elena's father had died when she was 16, leaving them with nothing but debt and each other. She had learned to stretch every dollar and make sacrifices that girls her age shouldn't have to make. The other waitresses at Giovanni's often talked about the handsome men who came in wearing expensive suits. They whispered about which ones were married and which ones might be single. But Elena never participated in these conversations. She had no time for romance or fairy tales. Her focus was survival and taking care of her mother. One rainy Tuesday evening, Elena was serving a table near the window when she accidentally knocked over a water glass. The water spilled across the table and onto the floor, and she quickly grabbed towels to clean it up. She was mortified by her clumsiness, especially since the restaurant was full of important-looking customers. "I'm so sorry," she whispered to the customer, not looking up as she wiped the table. "I'll get you a new glass right away." "It's no problem at all," came a deep voice that made her pause. "These things happen." When Elena finally looked up, she found herself staring into the darkest eyes she had ever seen. The man was probably in his 30s, with black hair and strong features. He wore a perfectly tailored navy suit, and there was something about him that made her nervous in a way she couldn't explain. "Thank you for understanding," she managed to say before hurrying away to get a replacement glass. From his corner booth, Dante watched Elena's every move that night. He saw how she bit her lip when she was concentrating, how she smiled genuinely at the children when their families came in for dinner, and how she counted her tips at the end of the night like every dollar mattered. He began to learn her routine without her knowing it. Elena caught the same bus every morning at 7:15 to get to school. She always sat in the third seat from the front and read textbooks during the ride. After school, she walked 12 blocks to the daycare because she couldn't afford bus fare for the return trip. She worked with the children until 4 p.m., then walked another 8 blocks to Giovanni's for her evening shift. Dante found himself driving slowly past the daycare center, watching through the windows as Elena played with the children. She laughed with them, helped them with their homework, and seemed to genuinely care about each one. It was a side of her he had never seen at the restaurant, and it only made him more fascinated. Meanwhile, Elena remained completely unaware of the attention she was receiving. She was too focused on her own struggles to notice the black sedan that sometimes followed her bus, or the way certain customers at the restaurant seemed to watch her more closely than others. Her mother's condition was getting worse, and the medical bills were becoming impossible to manage. Elena had already dropped one of her classes to work more hours, but it still wasn't enough. She lay awake at night worrying about money and wondering how much longer she could keep everything together. One evening at Giovanni's, Elena overheard a conversation between 2 men at one of her tables. They were talking about someone named Dante Marconi and how he controlled most of the businesses in the neighborhood. The name meant nothing to Elena, but she filed it away in her mind along with all the other bits of information she accidentally heard while serving customers. She had no idea that the man they were discussing was sitting just 3 tables away, watching her every move. Dante's obsession was growing stronger by the day. He had his men do background checks on Elena, learning about her family situation, her financial struggles, and her dreams of opening a bakery. He knew more about her life than some of her closest friends did, yet she didn't even know his name. He wanted to help her, to take away all her worries and give her everything she needed. But he also knew that his world was dangerous, and involving an innocent girl like Elena could put her in harm's way. The war between wanting to protect her and wanting to possess her was tearing him apart. Elena's birthday came and went without celebration. She couldn't afford to take time off work or spend money on anything that wasn't absolutely necessary. She spent the day like any other, attending classes, working at the daycare, and serving tables at Giovanni's. What she didn't know was that Dante had discovered it was her birthday through his research. He sat in his usual corner booth that night, watching her work and wishing he could do something to make her smile. He had never felt so powerless in his life, despite being one of the most powerful men in the city. As Elena cleaned tables and took orders, she remained completely unaware that her life was about to change forever. The invisible waitress who had caught the attention of the city's most dangerous man was living on borrowed time, though she didn't know it yet. Dante's patience was running out, and his desire to make Elena his was becoming impossible to ignore. The question was no longer if he would approach her, but when and how. And once he made his move, there would be no going back for either of them. The morning that changed everything started like any other for Elena. She woke up at 6 a.m. in her tiny apartment, made coffee with the last of her grounds, and checked on her mother who was still sleeping. Maria's breathing was labored, and Elena made a mental note to call the doctor later. The medical bills were already crushing them, but her mother's health came first. Elena grabbed her worn backpack and headed for the bus stop, unaware that today would be different from every other day of her carefully structured life. At the same time, across the city in his penthouse office, Dante was making a decision that would change both their lives forever. He had spent months watching Elena from the shadows, learning everything about her, wanting her with an intensity that surprised even him. Last night, something inside him had snapped. He had been sitting in his usual corner booth at Giovanni's when he witnessed something that made his blood boil. A young man, probably a college student like Elena, had been flirting with her while she took his order. The guy had touched her hand when she handed him the menu, and Elena had smiled politely in return. That smile, innocent as it was, had triggered something dark and possessive in Dante. He realized he couldn't continue watching from the sidelines while other men tried to capture the attention of the woman he considered his, even though she didn't know it yet. Elena was in her economics class when her phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. She normally wouldn't check her phone during class, but something made her look. "Your mother is in the hospital, St. Mary's emergency room. Come immediately." Elena's heart stopped. She grabbed her things and ran from the classroom, not bothering to explain to the professor. The bus ride to the hospital felt like hours instead of minutes. Her mind raced with terrible possibilities. What if her mother had collapsed? What if she was dying? What if Elena couldn't afford the treatment? When Elena burst through the emergency room doors, she was breathless and terrified. She ran to the reception desk, her voice shaking as she asked about her mother. "Maria Rodriguez," she gasped. "Someone texted me that she was here. Is she okay?" The nurse looked confused as she checked the computer. "I'm sorry, miss, but we don't have anyone here by that name. Are you sure you have the right hospital?" Elena's phone rang before she could respond. The same unknown number. "Hello?" she answered, her voice trembling. "Miss Rodriguez?" The voice was deep and calm, with an accent she couldn't place. "I apologize for the deception, but I needed to speak with you privately. Who is this? Where's my mother? If you've hurt her, I swear I'll—" "Your mother is safe at home, sleeping peacefully. I would never harm an innocent woman. My name is Dante Marconi, and I have a proposition for you." Elena's knees went weak. She had heard that name whispered in the restaurant. Everyone seemed to fear Dante Marconi, though she had never understood why. "What do you want from me?" "Meet me at Central Park by the fountain in 1 hour. Come alone, and I will explain everything. If you don't come, your mother's medical bills will become much more expensive, and you'll lose both your jobs by tomorrow." The line went dead. Elena stared at her phone, her hands shaking. She knew she should call the police, but something in the man's voice told her he wasn't bluffing about the threats. She couldn't afford to lose her jobs, and her mother needed medical care. An hour later, Elena stood by the fountain in Central Park, looking around nervously. The park was fairly empty, except for a few joggers and dog walkers. She was about to leave when a black sedan pulled up to the curb. A tall man in an expensive suit got out of the car and walked toward her. Elena recognized him immediately as the customer she had spilled water on weeks ago. Now that she knew who he was, everything about him seemed different. The way he moved, the way other people instinctively stepped out of his path, the power that radiated from him like heat. "Miss Rodriguez," Dante said as he approached, "thank you for coming. What do you want?" Elena's voice was stronger than she felt. "Why did you lie about my mother being hurt?" Dante studied her face, noting how her dark eyes flashed with anger instead of fear. Most people cowered when they met him. But Elena stood her ground despite being obviously terrified. It only made him want her more. "I've been watching you," he said simply, "for months. I know about your mother's illness, your financial struggles, your dreams of opening a bakery. I know you work 16 hours a day just to barely survive." Elena's face went pale. "You've been stalking me?" "Protecting you," Dante corrected. "Do you think it's a coincidence that you've never been mugged walking home alone at night? That the landlord hasn't raised your rent despite the market prices doubling? That your mother's insurance somehow keeps approving treatments it should have denied months ago?" Elena stared at him, pieces clicking into place. "That was you?" "I can give you everything you need," Dante continued. "Your mother's medical bills paid in full. Enough money to finish college and open your bakery, a life without worry or struggle." "What's the catch?" Elena asked, though she already suspected she knew. "Be mine," Dante said simply. "Move in with me. Let me take care of you the way you deserve to be taken care of." Elena took a step back. "You're crazy if you think I would ever—" "Look at your phone," Dante interrupted. Elena looked down to see a text message with a photo attachment. It was a picture of her mother, asleep in her bed, taken through the apartment window. A second photo showed Elena herself at the daycare center that morning, playing with the children. "I'm not threatening you," Dante said quietly. "I'm showing you how easily I could protect you, or how easily someone else could hurt you. My world is dangerous, Elena. There are people who would love to use you against me." "Against you? I don't even know you." "But I know you," Dante said, stepping closer. "I know you bite your lip when you're concentrating. I know you give your last dollar to the homeless man outside Giovanni's every Friday night. I know you read romance novels when you think no one is looking, dreaming of a life you think you'll never have." Elena felt exposed, vulnerable. "You have no right. I have every right to protect what's mine." "I'm not yours," Elena shouted, drawing looks from nearby pedestrians. Dante's expression didn't change. "You will be. The only question is whether you choose to come willingly or whether circumstances force your hand." Elena turned to run, but Dante's next words stopped her cold. "Your mother's insulin costs $800 a month. You're already 2 payments behind. The pharmacy will stop filling her prescriptions next week unless you pay the full amount. You don't have $800, Elena. You've never had $800 all at once in your entire life." Elena's shoulders slumped. Everything he said was true. She had been trying to figure out how to come up with the money for her mother's medication, losing sleep over it for weeks. "I'm not asking you to love me," Dante continued, his voice gentler now. "I'm asking you to let me take care of you. You're exhausting yourself trying to survive when I could give you a life beyond your wildest dreams." "And what happens if I say no?" Dante was quiet for a long moment. "Then you go back to your life, and I go back to mine." "But Elena, how much longer can you keep this up? How many more 18-hour days can you work before you collapse? What happens to your mother when you can't take care of her anymore?" Elena knew he was right, and she hated him for it. She had been pushing herself to the breaking point for months, and there was no end in sight. Her mother's condition was getting worse, not better. The medical bills kept growing. Her dreams of college and a bakery were slipping further away every day. "I need time to think," she whispered. "You have until tomorrow night," Dante said. "Meet me at Giovanni's at closing time. Give me your answer then." He turned and walked back to his car, leaving Elena standing alone by the fountain. As she watched him drive away, she realized her life had just become infinitely more complicated. The invisible waitress was invisible no more, and the most dangerous man in the city had just made her an offer she wasn't sure she could refuse. Elena didn't sleep at all that night. She sat by her mother's bedside, watching her breathe and thinking about Dante's offer. Every logical part of her mind screamed that she should run, call the police, do anything except meet him at Giovanni's. But another part of her, the exhausted part that was tired of struggling every single day, whispered that maybe this was her only chance at a different life. When morning came, Elena went through her routine like a robot. She attended her classes but didn't absorb a single word. At the daycare, she played with the children, but her mind was elsewhere. The kids seemed to sense something was wrong, gathering around her with worried faces. "Miss Elena, why are you sad?" asked Tommy, a 5-year-old with bright blue eyes. "I'm just thinking about grown-up stuff," Elena managed to smile. "Nothing for you to worry about." But Elena was worrying enough for everyone. She had spent the morning researching Dante Marconi online, and what she found made her stomach turn. There were no criminal charges, nothing official, but the whispers and rumors painted a picture of a man who controlled the city through fear and violence. Yet somehow, when she remembered his dark eyes looking at her by the fountain, she hadn't seen a monster. She had seen loneliness. That afternoon brought the news Elena had been dreading. Her mother's doctor called to say that Maria's condition was deteriorating faster than expected. She needed a more expensive treatment, and without it, she might not survive the next 6 months. The total cost would be around $50,000, the doctor explained gently. I know that's a lot, but there are payment plans available. Elena hung up the phone and sat in her tiny kitchen, staring at bills she couldn't pay with money she didn't have. $50,000 might as well have been $50 million. She made barely enough to cover rent and basic medications. As evening approached, Elena found herself getting ready for work with unusual care. She washed her hair and wore her nicest uniform, though she couldn't say why. Maybe because she knew this might be her last normal day, or maybe because some part of her had already made the decision she was afraid to admit. Giovanni's was busier than usual that night, which Elena was grateful for. Staying busy kept her from thinking too much about what was coming. She served families celebrating birthdays, couples on dates, and the usual collection of well-dressed men who spoke in low voices and watched everyone who came and went. As closing time approached, Elena's heart began racing. The other waitresses finished their work and left, the kitchen staff cleaned up and departed, and soon Elena found herself alone in the dining room, wiping down tables that were already clean. At exactly 11 o'clock, the front door opened, and Dante walked in. He looked different somehow, less intimidating than he had at the park. He wore dark jeans and a simple black sweater instead of his usual expensive suit. His hair was slightly messy, as if he had been running his hands through it. "Elena," he said softly, stopping near the entrance. She looked up from the table she was cleaning. "You came. Did you think I wouldn't?" Elena set down her cloth and faced him fully. "I don't know what to think about anything anymore." Dante walked slowly toward her, his hands in his pockets. "Have you made your decision?" "I've been thinking about it all day," Elena said, "and I have questions." "Ask me anything." Elena took a breath. "If I say yes, what exactly are you asking me to do? Because I won't be your mistress or your plaything or whatever it is that men like you expect from women like me." Dante's expression grew serious. "I would never treat you that way. I'm asking you to let me court you properly, to give us a chance to see if what I feel for you could become something real between us. And if it doesn't? If I can never care for you the way you want me to?" Dante was quiet for a long moment. "Then at least you and your mother will be safe and cared for. I'm not asking for guarantees, Elena. I'm asking for a chance." Elena walked over to the window and looked out at the dark street. "My whole life, I've taken care of myself. I've never depended on anyone, never let anyone control my choices. What you're asking me to do goes against everything I believe about being independent." "Independence is a luxury you can't afford," Dante said gently. "I'm not trying to control you. I'm trying to free you from the struggles that are killing you slowly." Elena turned back to him. "What about my mother? Where would she live?" "Wherever you want her to. I can arrange for her to have the best medical care available in her own home or in a private facility, whatever makes you both comfortable." "And my job at the daycare? My college classes?" "You could continue both if that's what makes you happy, or you could focus on your dream of opening a bakery. I could help you start your own business." Elena studied his face, looking for signs that he was lying or manipulating her. Instead, she saw something that surprised her. Vulnerability. Despite all his power and wealth, Dante Marconi looked like a man who was afraid she would say no. "Why me?" she asked. "You could have anyone. Beautiful women, wealthy women, women who understand your world." Dante moved closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne and see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. "Because you're real, Elena. In my world, everyone wants something from me. Money, power, protection. They smile and lie and pretend to care while calculating what they can gain. But you served me coffee for months without even knowing who I was. You treated me like just another customer. Do you know how rare that is?" Elena felt something shift inside her chest, a crack in the wall she had built around her heart. I'm scared, she whispered. Of me? Of everything. Of your world. Of what people will think. Of losing myself in your life. She paused. But mostly I'm scared of what happens to my mother if I say no. Dante reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted to. When she didn't, he gently took her hand. I would never use your mother's condition to manipulate you, Elena. Even if you say no tonight, I'll make sure she gets the treatment she needs. Elena stared at him in shock. You would do that? Even if I refuse you? Yes, Dante said simply. Because that's what you would do if our positions were reversed. You have a good heart, Elena. That's why I love you. The words hit Elena like a physical blow. Love. He had said he loved her, this powerful, dangerous man who could have anything he wanted, and looking into his eyes, she believed him. I don't love you, she said honestly. I don't even know you. I know, Dante replied, but I'm hoping that could change, given time. Elena closed her eyes and thought about her mother, alone and sick in their tiny apartment. She thought about the children at the daycare who depended on her. She thought about her dreams of opening a bakery, dreams that were slipping further away with each passing day. When she opened her eyes, Dante was still watching her with that vulnerable expression that didn't match his reputation. If I say yes, Elena said slowly, I want your promise that I can walk away any time I choose, that you won't try to force me to stay. You have my word. And I want to keep working at the daycare, at least for now. Those children need consistency. Of course. Elena took a deep breath. Then yes, Dante, I'll give us a chance. The transformation in Dante's face was immediate and breathtaking. The careful control he always maintained cracked, revealing a smile so genuine and relieved that Elena felt her heart skip a beat. Thank you, he said, bringing her hand to his lips and kissing it gently. You won't regret this, Elena. I promise you won't regret this. As Elena looked into the dark eyes of the man who would change her life forever, she hoped he was right. She was no longer invisible. No longer just another waitress struggling to survive. She was the woman who had captured the heart of the city's most powerful man, and there was no going back. Outside Giovanni's restaurant, in the shadows across the street, other eyes watched the scene unfold. Eyes that belonged to people who had been waiting for Dante Marconi to show weakness. Now they had found it, and her name was Elena Rodriguez. The invisible waitress had become visible to everyone, including Dante's enemies. And that visibility would change everything once again, in ways neither Elena nor Dante could yet imagine. But for now, in this moment, all that mattered was the promise of a new beginning and the hope that love might be possible, even in the darkest of worlds.